My name is Aurelia Voss, 34 years old. The first time I learned money could be a mirror that showed you exactly where you stood. I was 10 and holding a drugstore cupcake while my brother blew out candles under a chandelier. Brandon's parties had themes and budgets. Mine had apologies. Money's tight, honey, Mom would say, like a lullaby meant to put the inconvenient child to sleep. For Brandon's 16th, a valet line curled around a Louisville restaurant. Dad handed him a red Mustang key, while neighbors clapped like they were watching a coronation. On my 16th, I wore a polite smile and unboxed hand-me-down sweaters that still smelled faintly of someone else's life. I didn't start angry, I started organized. I learned how to make myself small and efficient. When Brandon's grades dipped, a private tutor materialized. When mine did, I taught myself algebra with a library book and a highlighter that ran dry the week before midterms. Dad boasted about Brandon's potential over roast beef. I learned the language of potential in silence, completed assignments, scholarships bookmarked, a calendar dotted with things no one else needed to remember. I started babysitting at 14, slipping bills into a tin under my bed and writing the number on an index card. Watching the total grow felt like standing on shore and seeing the idea of a bridge. Small moments cut the deepest. I caught Mom framing one of Brandon's report cards, B's dressed like trophies, while my straight A transcript got a distracted, nice job, before she turned the conversation toward his hockey gear. When I joined debate and brought home a medal, she left it on the counter under the mail. "We're proud of both of you," she said often, but pride had a seating chart in our house, and I was always at the far end, smiling at the backs of heads. I became the person who made lists to keep from coming apart, passwords in one notebook, college essays in a manila folder with a red tab, a timeline along the inside of my skull. Step 1, get out. Step 2, stay out. Step 3, build something that can't be ignored. The day I got a full scholarship to the University of Kentucky, I told Mom over the sink while she rinsed lettuce. "That's nice," she said, then asked if I'd heard about Brandon's new stick, carbon fiber, limited edition. I dried my hands. Carbon fiber sounded like a language other people were born speaking. College tasted like 5 a.m. bakery air, yeast and butter, and a plan. I kneaded dough before sunrise to pay for books and rent, my forearms stippled with tiny burns that felt like proof. In lectures, code made a different kind of sense. Rules, patterns, if-then statements that didn't change because someone's tone did. Dr. Hayes called me sharp. He pushed me into a campus hackathon where I learned how to inhale time. Second place came with a paper certificate I kept between 2 textbooks, as if weight could make belief permanent. I called home on Sundays out of muscle memory. Mom's voice flowed around Brandon. His boss liked him. His coach loved him. His apartment had crown molding. If I mentioned an A in data structures, she said, "Great," and asked if I'd picked a date to visit. When I told Dad the bakery promoted me to opening manager, he advised me to keep your head down, like ambition was something that could spook. Graduation was supposed to be the thing that put our house's gravity into question. I texted the details weeks in advance, circled the date on my cheap wall calendar, picked a dress that looked like stepping forward. The night before, Mom sent a message. "We're tied up with Brandon's event. You understand." Later I learned event meant a backyard barbecue with a rented tent and a signature cocktail. I walked across the stage alone, my name echoing in a gym that made every sound smaller. My roommates waved a poster that said, "Go Aurelia," in glitter that fell like confetti onto their shoes. I smiled for photos I didn't send. The day after, I called home and asked the question I had rehearsed across the bakery counter, the library staircase, the empty dorm lobby at midnight. "Why did you choose his party over my graduation?" Mom inhaled that soft, managerial breath. "It was important for his career, honey. We'll celebrate you later." Later, like a rain check you never intend to cash. Dad chimed in from somewhere off speaker. "Don't make this complicated." I stared at the blank space on my wall where a framed photo could have been. I didn't sob. I reorganized. I took the graduation program and slid it into a folder I labeled records, a word that had always comforted me. Then I opened my laptop and made a new list. The first line, stop asking to be invited. The second, build something no one can pretend not to see. The third, written smaller, like a secret I wasn't ready to tell anyone. One day, buy a house where the ocean erases every voice that ever told you to shrink. That summer, I learned the pleasure of taking up room with work. Code piled up like bricks. I sketched an app in a coffee shop that turned milk to paint in the morning light. Short video tools for local creators, corners of the internet big platforms ignored. I didn't have money, but I had hours, and the ability to make hours behave. The bakery manager would hand me a bag of day-old croissants, and I'd eat one over my keyboard, thinking about user flows and how to make a publish button feel like possibility. It comforted me that, in code, what you build either runs or it doesn't. Excuses don't compile. Sometimes, standing at the crosswalk outside the campus library, I'd see the future like a flash. Glass, light, a shoreline, a caption that would travel farther than any of Mom's explanations ever did. I didn't know the words yet, only the feeling of a post that would be both a thank you and a refusal. I tucked it away like a folded note in a jacket pocket you plan to wear when the weather changes. I wish I could tell you I moved on without looking back, that work replaced want. The truth is smaller and more durable. I learned to hold both. I carried the ache like a coin in my fist and the plan like a map in my sleeve. Every morning, I woke up and chose to build a life they couldn't enter just by knocking. Every night, I wrote a little more of the story I meant to live. And somewhere in the middle of all that bricklaying, I felt the breeze of a door I hadn't opened yet, the one that would swing wide years later when I posted a single pointed sentence and my phone began to ring. I was 24 when exhaustion started to taste like caffeine, the kind that sits cold on your desk by 3 a.m., but still counts as progress. I'd taken a junior developer job at a small Lexington tech firm that felt like a garage with better lighting, peeling carpet, shared monitors, burnt popcorn smell. The pay barely covered rent, but I didn't care. Every line of code was a step out of invisibility. My coworkers were sharp in quiet ways. Brian Kim was the first to notice me coding through lunch. He was older by a few years, always in hoodies that looked perpetually half-dried, but his eyes had that engineer's humor, half calculation, half mischief. "That your side project?" he asked, pointing at my screen one afternoon. "Just an idea," I said. "A platform for local creators, short-form content, more community, less algorithm." He leaned in. "So basically, everything the big apps forgot to be. You should pitch that somewhere." I laughed. "Pitch it to who? My landlord?" "Leave it to me," he said, and meant it. By then, I'd gotten used to being the unseen girl in rooms full of noise. But Brian didn't treat me like background code. He pushed, in that annoyingly supportive way, until one Monday morning he forwarded an email titled Louisville Tech Summit. Application confirmed. Underneath, he wrote, "You're presenting Vibe Stream." I almost spilled coffee on the keyboard. "Brian, what did you do?" "Gave you stage time," he said, grinning. "You'll thank me later." I didn't feel grateful. I felt nauseous, but it was the good kind, the kind that meant something might finally shift. For 2 weeks, I lived between work and panic rehearsals. The office's break room became my stage. Brian lobbed fake investor questions while our designer, Sarah Lynn, pretended to take notes. She was meticulous and quietly fierce, the sort of person who fixed bugs and your posture. "You need a stronger tagline," she said one night, eyes on my laptop. "Something that sounds like rebellion, not apology." We tested phrases until midnight. She sketched a logo on a napkin, a ripple inside a circle, one line breaking free. "Vibe Stream," she said. "It looks like motion." I stared at the napkin, realizing it was the first time someone had taken my idea seriously. The conference was in Louisville, a city that still smelled like family ghosts. I hadn't been back since graduation. As I walked through the convention center's glass doors, my chest tightened. Somewhere across town, Mom and Dad were probably having dinner with Brandon, pretending the word favoritism was a myth. Backstage, I clutched a USB drive like a talisman. The host's voice echoed, "Next, please welcome Aurelia Voss." The lights were surgical, my palms slicked with sweat. But when I started talking about Vibe Stream, about giving local voices a space untouched by the noise of celebrity culture, the fear rewired itself into fuel. I showed early mock-ups, demo clips of creators sharing music and mini documentaries. The crowd leaned forward. Someone even took notes. When it was over, the applause wasn't thunderous, but it was real. And in the third row, Brian raised a coffee cup in salute. Outside, as adrenaline cooled, I heard a voice I hadn't expected. Aurelia Voss? You still monologue like debate club. I turned. Katie Sullivan, my old teammate from high school debates, stood there in a navy blazer, same quick grin, new confidence. You crushed that pitch, she said. I blinked. You were there? Front row. I work in PR now. Figured I'd scout some talent. She winked. Consider yourself scouted. We ended up at a diner near the river, the kind with sticky menus and the hum of tired ambition. She listened while I poured years into words. College, code, the skipped graduation, the silence. Katie had always been the kind of friend who doesn't flinch at other people's anger. When I told her about my family's absence, she didn't say, "I'm sure they love you." She said, "They lost the right to make you prove your worth." It felt like permission. Months passed in caffeine and deadlines. VibeStream's prototype went live, messy but alive. A local singer uploaded her first video. Within days, it had 1,000 views. We stayed up all night fixing server bugs and laughing every time the counter jumped. When the exhaustion hit, Sarah brought brownies. Brian quoted our error logs like they were poetry. They weren't coworkers anymore. They were gravity, in a world that had always let me float alone. Then one morning, while debugging a server crash, I saw a message from home. Mom's name on my screen after almost 2 years. Brandon's wedding this weekend. You can stop by if you want. It's formal. No invited. No, hope you can make it. Just stop by, like I was a neighbor who might swing in with a casserole. I read it twice, then I called. "Mom, why wasn't I on the guest list?" I asked. Pause. The clink of dishes. "It's a high-profile crowd, honey. We didn't think you'd feel comfortable." Dad's voice chimed from the background, muffled but clear. "It's Brandon's day. Let's not make it about old drama." I stared at the message until the words blurred. High-profile crowd. The phrase rang like a locked door. I didn't go. Instead, I met Katie at the same diner. She ordered fries. I ordered silence, and somehow that counted as comfort. "They didn't invite me," I said finally. "Said I wouldn't fit in." She dipped a fry in ketchup, thoughtful. "Then maybe they're right. You don't fit in small rooms anymore." It should have hurt less than it did, but her words were the only ones that didn't sting. That night, I scrolled through social media. Photos of Brandon and his bride under chandeliers. My parents glowing like they'd raised perfection. I shut my laptop and opened my app dashboard instead. VibeStream's user count ticked upward, slowly, steadily. Each new number felt like a small revenge, a line of proof compiling into something unignorable. For the first time, I believed that the world could see me, even if my family never did. And somewhere between code lines and the quiet hum of my apartment, I realized I was done waiting for an invitation, because I was already building my own stage. By the time I turned 30, my life no longer resembled the version my parents used to predict for me. VibeStream wasn't just a side project anymore. It had become a living, breathing network. Local creators, small-town musicians, independent artists, people who'd been invisible to algorithms were building audiences. Each upload felt like a quiet rebellion, and I was its architect. The app reached 500,000 users that spring. Investors started calling. I quit freelancing and rented a tiny office above a florist shop in downtown Lexington. Every morning, the smell of roses mixed with burnt coffee and the buzz of our 5-person team. Sarah worked from one corner surrounded by sticky notes. Brian ruled the whiteboard with equations that made sense only to him. We argued, laughed, coded, and ordered takeout like we were feeding a startup beast that might devour us or crown us. I wasn't rich yet, but I was free. Then came Helen Parker. She was one of our early investors, a sharp real estate developer who had built her empire flipping beachfront properties. She'd flown down to meet me after a conference and stayed for 2 hours longer than planned, peppering me with questions about scalability and creative ownership. When she smiled, it wasn't the polite kind. It was recognition. "You remind me of me," she said, stirring her coffee. "Except you still work weekends." I laughed. "You stopped?" "Never," she replied, "but I stopped apologizing for it." That line stuck. A few months later, Helen called with an unexpected offer. "I'm selling my villa in Destin," she said. "You've earned a place that reflects what you've built. I'd rather sell it to someone who fought their way up than another vacationer with a trust fund." I thought she was joking. But a week later, I stood barefoot on marble floors, listening to the surf crash against the Gulf. The villa wasn't just beautiful, it was symbolic. Floor-to-ceiling windows open to blue horizon, sunlight folding over polished stone. Every corner whispered, "You did this." I signed the papers with hands that shook a little. That night, I took a photo of the house at sunset, the ocean caught on glass, soft orange light spilling across the balcony. I posted it on Facebook with a single caption. "Thanks, family, for the motivation." I meant it as quiet irony, a period at the end of a very long sentence. It wasn't quiet for long. Within minutes, the notifications came like surf breaking. Hearts, likes, comments from people I hadn't heard from in years. And then, the ones that made my stomach twist. Mom: "So proud of you, honey. We should visit soon." Dad: "Wow, what a place. Let's celebrate together." Brandon: "Nice spot, sis. Save a room for me." Cousin Diane: "Perfect for a family reunion." Corey: "Looks like a party house. When's the invite?" My phone buzzed nonstop. Each word felt too sweet, like dessert served over rot. These were the same voices that had gone silent when I was eating ramen in a dim apartment, the same family that skipped my graduation and wedding invitation charade. I put the phone face down and tried to focus on the waves, but it buzzed again. A friend from Lexington, Tasha, sent me a screenshot from our extended family's group chat. Mom had written, "Our Aurelia is doing so well. That villa will be perfect for family vacations." Dad replied, "Told you she'd make it big." The irony burned hotter than the Florida sun. They were bragging now, claiming my success like a trophy they'd polish themselves. The same people who told me I wouldn't fit in at Brandon's wedding were suddenly rehearsing speeches about their talented daughter. That night, I sat on the balcony watching the horizon fade into black, the salt air thick against my skin. The villa hummed with silence, the kind that feels both freeing and haunted. I thought about the countless times I'd stared at my bedroom ceiling as a kid, promising myself I'd escape the hierarchy of our house. Back then, I'd imagined freedom as a mansion, a bank account, a headline. Now I had all three in miniature: a house that glittered, a company on the rise, and a social post with too many notifications. But the truth was simpler. I wanted peace, not proof. I reread Mom's comment, "So proud of you, honey," and tried to imagine if pride could be born from guilt. Maybe. But this felt more like possession. The next morning, the calls began. Mom first. Her voice syrupy, a tone she used for church fundraisers. "Honey, that villa is stunning. We'd love to come see it. Maybe make a weekend of it. Reconnect." Reconnect, the word lodged in my throat. Dad followed an hour later. "You've done amazing, Aurelia. We're thinking. A little celebration? You host, we'll bring the wine." Then Brandon: "Sis, seriously, that place looks insane. Erica and I could use a break. What do you say? Family reunion?" I said nothing. I just stared at the screen, at the parade of names that had ignored me for a decade. Each voicemail sounded like someone cashing in a bond they never paid into. That night, I poured myself a drink and replayed Mom's message one last time. We'd love to come see it. Maybe reconnect. The silence after that word felt like a cliff edge. I picked up the phone, not to call back, but to scroll through photos of my team instead. Brian holding a pizza box like a trophy, Sarah asleep on a beanbag under fairy lights, Helen raising her coffee in a toast. People who had shown up when I had nothing but a laptop and nerve. I realized something then. Connection isn't blood, it's presence. Still, some part of me wanted closure, maybe even justice. So I opened a new note on my phone and started typing what I'd never said aloud. Every skipped event, every shrug disguised as love, every moment that taught me to stand on my own. Tomorrow, I told myself, I'd decide whether to pick up when they called again. But deep down, I already knew my answer. The next morning, I didn't even get through my first cup of coffee before Mom called again. The ringtone, her name in a tone I hadn't heard since college, made my stomach knot. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. I answered. "Mom, Aurelia!" Her voice was honey and effort. "I'm so glad you picked up. We've all been talking. We just miss you so much. Your father and I thought maybe this villa could be a fresh start, a place to bring everyone together again." I leaned against the marble counter, watching sunlight crawl across the floor. "A fresh start," I repeated. That's a big ask from people who skip the middle of the story. Silence crackled. Then her sigh, thin, fragile, rehearsed. "We did our best. Things weren't easy back then. You always misread." Misread? My laugh was short, sharp. I misread birthdays where he got cars, and I got clearance sweaters. Graduations where you went to his barbecue instead of my ceremony. Aurelia, don't do this, her voice cracked. You're being unfair. Unfair. The word hit like deja vu. I'd heard it every time I'd asked for equality. Unfair is what you called me when I wanted one day to be about me, I said quietly. Now you want a weekend. I just want my family back, she whispered. You had one, I said. You just forgot I was part of it. I hung up before the tremor in my voice turned into tears. Dad's number appeared 20 minutes later. I didn't plan to answer, but the part of me still craving logic, explanation, picked up anyway. Dad, sweetheart, he began, that patronizing tone managers use to calm a room. Your mother's upset. She meant well. We all did. I waited. He filled the space like always. Families drift, but blood stays blood. We're proud of what you've done. Let us visit. Make things right. Make things right, I repeated, steady. Do you even remember the last time you showed up for me? He hesitated. College? Graduation, I corrected. You weren't there. We had obligations. Brandon's barbecue, I remember. Dad exhaled, irritation bleeding through. You've been holding grudges for too long. We gave you a roof, food, education. No, I interrupted. I gave myself the education, the scholarships, the jobs, the sleepless nights. I built this without you, and now that it's beautiful, you want to stand in the picture. He went silent long enough for me to hear the gulls outside, then softly. You sound just like your mother when she's angry. Then maybe that's your family's inheritance, I said, and ended the call. Brandon was next. His name flashed across the screen while I was unpacking boxes. I almost laughed at the timing. Sis! His tone was cheerful, like nothing had ever happened. Can we talk? Don't hang up yet, okay? I wasn't planning to, I said flatly. Good. Because this distance, it's weird, right? We're family. Let's just move on. Erica and I were thinking of coming down next month. You'd love her new project. Brandon, I cut in. Stop. He blinked audibly, like I'd just slapped him through the phone. What? You don't get to talk about projects or vacations when you never showed up for mine. You knew they skipped my graduation. You knew I wasn't invited to your wedding. He laughed lightly, the kind that used to win Mom over. Come on, it wasn't personal. We just... different circles, you know? Right, I said. High-profile crowd. I remember. That's Mom's phrasing, not mine. You know how she is. And you know how you are, I said. You let her make the rules because they always favored you. You took it all. The attention, the help, the money, and never asked why I got leftovers. Brandon's voice dropped, defensive now. You think it was easy being the favorite? They expected everything. I couldn't fail. You got to walk away. I had to live under their microscope. For a second, his words cracked the armor I'd built. But then I saw the image of his wedding chandeliers, the red Mustang, the way Mom had said our son's future is so bright while I scrubbed frosting off paper plates. Maybe you were under a microscope, I said, but you still had a safety net. I had air. He sighed. You've changed. Good, I replied, and hung up. That night, I poured another drink and walked through the villa in silence. My reflection stretched across the glass wall facing the sea. I thought about what each of them had said. Mom's guilt, Dad's defensiveness, Brandon's self-pity. None of them saw it yet. This house wasn't just property. It was evidence. Every inch of it had been built from moments they'd ignored. Still, the conversation left me raw. Anger has an echo, and mine filled the rooms like wind. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the VibeStream dashboard. 10 new creators had joined that day. People uploading songs, poetry, short films, people creating something from nothing. They reminded me of who I used to be, overlooked but relentless. A message from Sarah popped up on the screen. We're flying down next week to celebrate. Don't say no. Then Brian chimed in. We'll bring champagne and that terrible playlist you hate. I smiled. For the first time that day, I felt the tension ease. These were my people. They had shown up not for what I owned, but for what I built. Before bed, I opened an old box I'd found while unpacking. Inside, childhood photos, debate medals, a folder labeled Miss C. In it, a letter from Mom dated years ago. The paper yellowed, the ink slightly smudged. We're proud of you, even if we don't say it enough. Someday you'll understand how hard it is to balance everything. I folded it back carefully, heart steady. Maybe she had meant it once. Maybe love and blindness could coexist. But meaning something doesn't erase what you did. I slid the letter into a new folder labeled Kept Things. Then I looked out at the ocean and whispered to no one, "You can love people and still lock the door." Summer bled into gold. The villa's windows filled with morning light, so bright it almost looked like forgiveness. VibeStream hit 10 million users that month, 10 million small rebellions against silence, and my team insisted on flying down to celebrate. They arrived on a Friday night, arms full of groceries and noise. Sarah dragged in coolers and a Bluetooth speaker. Brian carried champagne and 2 laptops, just in case we need to debug between toasts. The villa, which had been echoing with too much quiet, came alive. We ate on the patio as the ocean wind tangled our laughter. Sarah raised her glass. To Aurelia, our fearless founder, who taught us that money's tight is just a dare. Everyone laughed. Even I did. It was the first toast in my life that didn't sting. Later, after most of them drifted to bed, I stayed up alone by the pool. The water shimmered darkly under the moon, my reflection split into ripples. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Then my phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unknown number. I pressed play. "Hello, Aurelia, it's your mother." Her voice was thinner, stripped of sugar. "I'm not calling to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know. Your father's been quiet lately. He misses you. We both do. Brandon and Erica are going through things. Everyone's scattered. The house feels too big. I found something you might want." She paused. I heard paper rustling. "It's from your graduation day. We did drive by the campus that afternoon, but your ceremony was over. I kept the program they were handing out at the gate. You were listed with honors. I didn't know who to give it to back then. I'm mailing it now. I'm sorry, honey." Click. I stared at the phone, heart split between disbelief and an ache I thought I'd outgrown. The next morning, a courier envelope arrived. Inside, the program she mentioned, folded neatly beside an old photo. In it, I was 14, awkward, smiling crookedly, clutching a debate trophy half my size. Behind me, Mom's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Dad's shadow fell just out of frame. I sat on the floor for a long time, the photo trembling in my hand. Not forgiveness, not yet, but evidence that maybe regret had finally found its way home. That night's party spilled into something bigger. Neighbors came. Local creators I'd helped promote showed up, bringing guitars, cameras, stories. The villa glowed like a small city. Balcony lights, music, laughter blending with the sea. At midnight, Brian tapped a glass with a spoon. "Speech." I stood reluctantly, barefoot on the warm tiles. The crowd quieted. "I don't have a speech," I said, voice shaking slightly. "Just a thought." They waited. When I was younger, I thought success would fix the way people saw me. That if I worked hard enough, they'd finally say my name with pride instead of surprise. But it turns out success doesn't heal the past. It just gives you new people who clap for the right reasons. Laughter, gentle, knowing. I used to think family meant obligation, but maybe it's proximity. Who shows up when it costs them something? That's you, all of you. Sarah lifted her glass again. "Then we're claiming you, boss." I smiled, gladly. When the guests finally left and silence returned, I stood by the balcony, the envelope still on my desk. I didn't open it again. I didn't call Mom back either. I just watched the tide erase its own footprints again and again. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a boundary you maintain without guilt. I had spent years trying to earn my family's pride, but what I really wanted was my own peace. And I had built it, brick by brick, code by code, choice by choice. Weeks later, a reporter from a tech magazine interviewed me about VibeStream's growth. "What drives you?" he asked, pen hovering. I smiled, thinking of the old phrase that used to cage me. "Proof," I said, "but not the kind I used to chase." He frowned, waiting. "I used to build things to prove people wrong. Now I build so no one else has to." He nodded slowly, scribbling. I didn't add the rest aloud, so no daughter ever has to beg to be seen. The next morning, I set a small frame note on the villa's bookshelf. Kept things. A graduation program, a childhood photo, a letter that said, "We're proud," my first line of code. Below it, I taped a line from my own journal. "You can love people and still never open the door again." I walked outside, barefoot in the sand, and watched the horizon brighten. The air tasted like salt and new beginnings. I thought of every time I'd been told, "Money's tight, be grateful, don't make this complicated," and I whispered into the wind, "I made it simple. I just stopped waiting." The waves rolled in, steady and endless, like applause that finally found its audience.